Snow drifted in slow, quiet sheets over the edge of Fort Sheridan, the kind of cold that worked its way into your bones. Christmas Eve was supposed to feel warm, but the streets around the small military community were empty and still. Senior Chief Cole Maddox walked with the steady, practiced gait of a man who'd spent most of his life on missions far from home. At his side padded Ranger, his aging canine partner, gray around the muzzle now, but still alert, still carrying himself like the battlefield never fully let him go. They turned behind a convenience store, boots crunching lightly in the snow. Two young soldiers leaned against the brick wall, smoking, laughing at nothing. Their eyes slid toward Cole, and one of them smirked. "Look at him. Old Seal thinks he's still in the fight, walking that washed-up dog." Cole didn't give them so much as a glance. But Ranger stopped dead, his ears shot forward, whole body stiffening toward the row of dumpsters. The laughter died. Ranger pulled sharply and Cole followed, instinct tightening in his chest. Then he saw her, a little girl, 6, maybe 7, kneeling beside a torn trash bag, fingers purple, breath shaking in the icy air. She didn't look up until Cole knelt beside her. Her eyes were wide, hollow, scared. She swallowed hard and whispered one word. "Help." Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these true stories of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Cole had seen children before in hard places. Villages burned, roads torn open by blasts, families running with whatever they could carry. But this was a back alley behind a gas station in Illinois, under yellow security lights and cheap Christmas decorations, and somehow this felt worse. A little girl, alone in the trash on Christmas Eve, was not something he had ever trained for. He shrugged his coat off without thinking and wrapped it around her shoulders. The fabric swallowed her, the sleeves hanging past her fingers, but she did not resist. She just kept her eyes down on the torn trash bag, breath fogging faintly in the cold air. Up close, she looked even smaller. Her coat was thin and dirty, all the warmth beaten out of it by weather and neglect. Her jeans were scraped at both knees, and a faded cartoon on her shirt showed through where the zipper had broken and refused to close. Ranger sat in front of her, not crowding, just settling into the snow with the patience of a working dog who understood that stillness could be as important as speed. His ears were tilted forward, head slightly bowed, like he knew this moment was not about him. Cole watched the dog first, not the girl, because Ranger never lied with his body language. Cole Maddox was 37 years old and moved like a man who had paid for every year in miles. Some days the stiffness in his knees was just age. Other days it was the ghost of hard landings, fast roping into compounds that no longer existed. He shifted his weight as he knelt, feeling the familiar tug in his lower back, and pushed it aside. He still wore his dog tags under his shirt. They tapped softly against his chest when he moved, a faint metallic reminder that part of him had never left SEAL Team 5. The truck parked near the curb held the rest of the proof. In the back seat, under a folded wool blanket, sat a polished wooden case and a neatly folded American flag that had once been handed to him with trembling, rehearsed words. Cole did not like thinking about the ceremony that followed that flag. He did not like thinking about the mission that had come before it either, the one that had gone sideways in ways no training could fix. He had not called the shots that night. Intel had been wrong, timing had been off, the weather had turned. Everyone had told him it was not on him. He carried it anyway. Ranger carried it with him. The dog had taken shrapnel on that same mission, a nasty line of scars that still cut through the fur along his flank. There were nights when Ranger's leg would tremble in his sleep, chasing something only he could see. Cole would wake, slide a hand over the scars, and whisper the same words he had said to the men under his command overseas. "You are still here. We made it home." He used that same voice now as he spoke to the girl. Low, steady, never sharp. "Hey," he said quietly. "You cold? I am going to stay right here, okay? Nobody is going to touch you." She did not answer. Her chin stayed tucked against her chest, hair hanging in tangled strands over her face. She held a crust of bread in one hand like it was something precious, even though it was hard and rimmed with frost. Her fingers were red and swollen, knuckles almost blue. Cole glanced once toward the two soldiers at the wall. Their faces had already shifted, bravado draining out of them as the reality of the scene settled in. One stubbed out his cigarette, eyes dropping. The other looked away entirely. Good, Cole thought. Let them sit with that. He focused back on the girl. His name is Ranger, he said. He works for treats and ear scratches. He is a terrible guard dog when it comes to kids. They always win. Ranger seemed to understand his cue. He inched forward on his belly, head low, tail giving the slightest hopeful thump in the snow. The girl's shoulders tightened, then eased, as if something in her recognized that this animal was not a threat. Her hand moved a fraction, then another, until her fingers brushed the fur at his neck. The change was small, but real. She did not smile, but some of the rigid tension in her frame loosened. She buried her hand deeper into Ranger's coat, soaking up the warmth. He is soft, she whispered, barely audible. Yeah, Cole answered, relief slipping into his voice. He thinks he is tougher than he is. There was a pause, the kind that feels like a held breath. What is your name? He asked. The girl hesitated, eyes flicking up for the first time. They were a pale, tired green, ringed with red from cold and crying that had probably started long before tonight. Mia, she said. Mia Clark. Clark. The name landed somewhere in his memory like a stone dropped into a deep well. Too many rosters, too many briefings, too many last names attached to folded flags. He stored it quietly for later. He did not pepper her with questions. He just noticed things. The way she flinched slightly when a car door slammed out on the street. The way her eyes jumped to the sound of distant sirens and stayed there until the noise faded. The way she looked at the convenience store entrance like it might spit out someone at any moment. You eaten anything today, Mia? He asked, keeping his tone casual. She looked down at the crust in her hand, then back at him, as if the answer might get her in trouble. There was food, she said slowly. But I could not stay. Could not or did not want to, Cole asked softly. Her mouth trembled. She pressed her face against Ranger's neck. Not safe, she murmured. Home is not safe. Cole felt something cold settle under his ribs that had nothing to do with the weather. He had heard those words before. Not safe. From villagers pointing at roads laced with explosives. From interpreters refusing to go back to houses the enemy had marked. From children in bombed-out schools who knew danger by the way the air changed. He saw it in her eyes now, that same haunted calculation, always measuring doors, exits, distance. Always waiting for the next shout or strike. Okay, he said, and meant it. We are not going to talk about home yet. Right now, we talk about staying warm. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crushed granola bar, the kind you buy in bulk and forget about until you need calories more than flavor. He unwrapped it halfway and held it out, not pushing it directly into her hand, just letting it sit there between them. You do not have to say anything, he added. You do not have to go anywhere you do not want to, but it would make me feel better if you ate. Her eyes flicked from his face to the bar, then to Ranger, who was staring at it with great interest. For a heartbeat, Cole thought she might hand it to the dog. Instead, she took it, slowly, as if expecting it to be snatched back. She broke off a small piece, chewed carefully, then another. The first real hint of color came back to her cheeks as the sugar hit her system. Cole could feel the wind cutting through his shirt sleeves now, but he did not reach for his coat. She needed it more than he did. Do you have a backpack, Mia? He asked. She nodded once and shifted enough for him to see it. The thing was small and cheap, one strap frayed, zipper busted open so it hung crooked. A doll's shoe poked out of the gap, along with a folded piece of paper and what looked like a corner of a photograph. You have some important stuff in there, huh? He said. She hugged it closer. It is all I have. Those words did something inside him. Years ago, if someone had asked Cole what he had, he would have pointed to gear, teammates, a mission, a clear chain of command. Now his list was much shorter. A dog with scars. A truck with a folded flag. A small apartment where the television stayed off more than it stayed on. And this little girl on the ground in front of him, shaking in his coat, started to feel like an answer to a question he had not wanted to ask out loud. He did not know what her full story was yet. He did not know who had failed her, or how many times. But he knew the look in her eyes. He had seen it in war zones and refugee camps and medevac helicopters. Something was very wrong in Mia Clark's world. Cole Maddox had walked away from a lot of battles when he left the Navy. He had never walked away from a child who said, "Not safe." He was not going to start tonight. The warmth hit them all at once when the automatic doors slid open, the dry blast of indoor heat fogging Mia's eyes and making Cole's skin prickle. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, washing out the cheap holiday decorations and the rows of snacks and coffee machines. It smelled like burned coffee, cleaning chemicals, and wet rubber from the mats at the door. Mia shrank in against his side as they stepped in, clutching her backpack with one hand and Ranger's fur with the other. The dog walked close, head slightly lowered but posture steady, adjusting his pace to match her tiny steps. Cole could feel the girl's fingers tightening, then loosening, like she might bolt at any second. A middle-aged woman by the coffee station paused mid-pour, eyes tracking them. A man in a reflective work jacket looked over the top of his phone. The two young soldiers from outside had drifted in as well, hovering near the coolers at the back, trying to look like they were not staring. Cole guided Mia toward a corner near the hot chocolate machine, away from the front door and the main flow of people. "We are just going to warm up," he murmured. "Nothing else right now." The store manager, a guy in his late 30s with a thinning hairline and a name tag that read Dave, glanced up from the register. His eyes swept over Cole's unshaven jaw, the worn jeans, the old hoodie with a faded Trident logo, then landed on Mia wrapped in his coat. His expression tightened. "Hey," Dave called out, voice too loud for the quiet store. "What's going on here?" Cole looked up, kept his own tone even. She was outside in the alley, cold. "I am just getting her warmed up." Dave came around the counter, wiping his hands on a towel, mouth already puckered into a frown. "Outside in the alley," he repeated. "With you." "Alone," Cole corrected, patience holding. "I found her alone." Dave's gaze dropped to the dog tags glinting at Cole's collarbone, then to Ranger's service harness. None of it seemed to soften his suspicion. People liked to thank veterans on holidays, slap a discount on a coffee, talk about heroes. They were less comfortable when one walked in with a shaking child in the middle of the night. "Is she yours?" Dave asked. Mia flinched at the sharpness in his voice and buried her face against Ranger's neck. The dog responded instantly, shifting closer to her, his body a physical shield. "Not my daughter," Cole said, "but she is under my protection until we figure this out." "That is not an answer," Dave snapped. "Do I need to call someone? Because this does not look right, man. You cannot just bring random kids in here in the middle of the night." A muscle jumped in Cole's jaw, but his words stayed measured. "You should call someone," he agreed. "Call the police. Call child services. Call whoever you want. But you are not calling her abuser. And you are not pulling her away from the only thing that is keeping her calm right now." The woman at the coffee station shifted uncomfortably. The man in the reflective jacket frowned and pretended to study a rack of chips. The two young soldiers exchanged a glance, guilt flickering across their faces. Dave folded his arms. "I have to think about liability," he said. "This is my store. If something happens in here, it is on me." "Then do the right thing in your store," Cole said quietly. "Get her warm. Get her safe. Then we will talk about paperwork." The store manager hesitated, mouth opening and closing as he weighed something invisible. Eventually he huffed, turned on his heel, and headed back toward the counter. "I am calling 911, he muttered. "They can sort this out." Mia's grip on Ranger tightened again. Cole could feel her small body shaking through the heavy fabric of his coat. Her eyes darted around the room, tracking exits, faces, the sound of the phone being lifted from its cradle. "It is okay," he told her. "Police are supposed to help. We are going to make sure they do." She did not look convinced. Minutes passed in an odd, stretched silence. The store's background music played some soft, forgettable Christmas song that clashed cruelly with the tension in the air. Steam curled from the hot drink machines. The heater clicked on and off, on and off. Cole unwrapped another granola bar and set it on the small ledge beside her. Mia took it without a word this time. Ranger lay at her feet, head up, watching the door. When the sirens finally wound down outside, she jumped so hard she nearly lost her balance. Cole steadied her with one hand on her shoulder. 2 patrol cars rolled to a stop beyond the gas pumps, lights washing red and blue over the snow. The reflections strobed across the glass doors, across Mia's pale face. She pressed closer to Ranger, almost disappearing behind him. The doors slid open, and 2 officers walked in, shaking snow from their jackets. One was older, lines at the corners of his eyes, a veteran of this town even if not of combat. The other was younger, maybe early 30s, uniform neat, posture a little too stiff. His name tag read, Higgs. Dave pointed toward Cole before they had even fully crossed the threshold. "Right there," he said. "Guy brings in a kid from the alley. Says he just found her. I do not know what is going on, but it does not feel right." Officer Higgs's eyes narrowed as he approached. He took in the scene in one quick sweep. The big man in worn clothes, the scared little girl clinging to a dog, the crowd pretending not to stare. All of it landed in whatever preloaded narrative he carried around about trouble. "Sir," Higgs said, stepping in close. "I am Officer Higgs with the County Sheriff's Department. I am going to need you to step away from the child." Mia panicked at the word child like it meant property, not person. She scrambled sideways and ended up half behind Cole, half behind Ranger, fingers knotted in the dog's harness. "She is fine where she is," Cole replied. His tone stayed calm, but there was a steel underneath it now. "You can talk to both of us right here." Higgs frowned. "That is not how this works. We have protocols. We need to verify her safety, get her statement without interference. You can wait over there." He gestured toward the opposite corner of the store. Cole did not move. "You raise your voice, or try to pull her away, and you will lose whatever trust she has left," he said quietly. "You see how she is shaking? That is not the weather." The older officer, Martinez, watched carefully, eyes moving between Cole's dog tags and Mia's white knuckles. He seemed to be doing a slower sort of math. But Higgs spoke first. "Sir, I am not going to ask again. Step aside. We will handle this." Ranger responded before Cole did. He shifted his weight forward just enough to place himself between Mia and the officer. His ears were up, his body a wall of fur and muscle, but his mouth stayed closed, teeth hidden. It was a protective stance, not a threat, but it sent a clear message. Several people in the store sucked in a breath. The 2 young soldiers straightened instinctively, as if remembering training they had only half absorbed. "You are scaring her," Cole said, eyes on Higgs. His voice dropped lower, more controlled, the same cadence he had used on jumpy teammates in bad situations. "Slow down. Ask, do not order. I am following procedure," Higgs snapped. "If she cannot answer basic questions, we take her into temporary custody until we sort it out." Mia's breathing sped up. "No," she blurted, the word coming out on a sob. "No, do not take me back." Everyone heard that. The woman by the coffee station froze, hand hovering over the creamer. The guy in the reflective jacket looked up from his phone, shame in his eyes at having pretended this was not his business. Higgs glanced at Mia, then right back to Cole, like the child's terror was just a complication, not the point. "Who is back?" he asked. "Is someone looking for you? Did you run away?" She shook her head so hard her hair whipped around her face. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She curled into a ball behind Ranger, pressing her forehead against his side. The dog did not move, steady as stone. Cole crouched slightly, bringing his head closer to Mia's level, but he kept his gaze on the officers. "Mia," he said gently, "you are not going anywhere without me knowing where and why, you hear me? I am not leaving you." Her fingers tightened in Ranger's fur. She did not answer, but she did not bolt either. In this moment, that counted as trust. Higgs exhaled sharply, impatience edging into his words. "This is not up to you, sir. If she will not talk, she goes with us. We have intake procedures." We have forms. We have a foster system. Cole knew that system. He knew it by stories from friends, by late-night phone calls with other veterans who had tried to intervene and gotten lost in the maze. He knew that kids like Mia could fall into it and get handed right back to the same hands they were running from because the right boxes had been checked. He also knew the look in Mia's eyes when she heard the word custody. It was not confusion. It was recognition. "Let me talk to her," Cole said. His voice was quiet enough that only the nearest people heard him. "Give me 2 minutes." "You can stand right there. If you do not like what you see, then we will talk about next steps. But if you force this, you are going to hurt her more than help her." Higgs opened his mouth to argue again, but Martinez raised a hand. "Give him the 2 minutes," the older officer said. "It is not going to kill us." Higgs rolled his eyes but stepped back half a pace. It was not much, but it was enough. Cole lowered himself all the way to the floor now, knees protesting. He did not touch Mia. He did not reach for her backpack or try to turn her face toward him. He just sat there, close enough for her to hear him over the pounding in her own ears. "Mia," he said softly, "you told me outside that home is not safe. I believe you. These officers are supposed to care about that. But they do not know you yet. They do not know what you have seen." She sniffed, shoulders shaking. Ranger's chest rose and fell under her cheek. "Do you remember what you did just a few minutes ago?" he continued. "You took a chance on Ranger. You reached out your hand. You made a choice not to stay alone. That was brave." She shifted a little, listening even if she stayed curled. "I am asking you for one more brave thing," Cole said. "You do not have to tell them everything. You do not have to talk about the worst parts. But if you can tell us one thing about why you are afraid to go back, I can fight for you." "I cannot do that if you stay silent." Silence stretched. A car door slammed outside, and she flinched again, but not as hard as before. One of the young soldiers took a step forward, then seemed to think better of it, and stopped, hands fisted at his sides. Higgs checked his watch, exasperation written all over his face. "We do not have all night," he muttered. Martinez shot him a warning look but said nothing. Mia's voice finally emerged, so quiet Cole had to lean in to hear. "She said I was in the way," Mia whispered. "She said if I was gone, the house would be easy to keep." Cole's heart clenched. He did not press for more. "Not yet." He looked up at the officers, holding Higgs's gaze. "You heard her," Cole said. "This is not a tantrum. This is not a runaway. Someone at that house wants her out of the picture. You take her out of my line of sight without a clear plan to keep her away from whoever that is, and you are not protecting a child. You are delivering her back to the problem." Higgs bristled, caught between authority and the discomfort of having it challenged in public. The crowd was larger now, a half circle of tired people who had just come in for coffee or gas, and now found themselves witnesses to something real. If you had been standing there, what would you have done? Would you have looked away, told yourself it was not your business, trusted the system to sort it out? Or would you have stepped closer, even a little, and stood beside the man on the floor and the shaking girl and the old war dog who was doing everything he could without words? The heat inside the store worked slowly, like it had to convince Mia's body it was allowed to thaw. Her cheeks stopped trembling first. Then her fingers loosened where they'd been balled into fists. She sat on the floor beside Ranger while Cole stayed close enough to reassure her, but not so close that she felt trapped. A few minutes passed before she spoke again, not in full sentences, just pieces, fragile little scraps of truth that drifted out when she exhaled. "She said I was in the way," Mia murmured, eyes fixed on the tile floor. Cole didn't push. He simply nodded, letting her know he heard her. Mia swallowed. "He didn't stop her," another whisper, barely more than breath. Cole kept his posture relaxed, voice soft. "Who didn't stop her, Mia?" She shook her head, hair falling into her face. She wasn't ready. And that was okay. Rushing her would shut her down completely. He had seen this kind of fear before, the kind you don't name because naming it makes it real. "They told people I was fine." Her voice cracked on the last word. Said I was living somewhere else. But I wasn't. Cole felt something cold tighten under his sternum. Someone had been covering their tracks. Someone had gone out of their way to make sure no one asked questions. He watched as she adjusted her backpack, pulling it closer with a little grunt. The broken zipper snagged on the faded fabric, leaving the top gaping open. Something slipped out, just enough for Cole to catch the corner of a photograph inside. "May I see what's in there?" he asked gently. Mia hesitated, then nudged the backpack toward him with a tiny motion. Not trust, not fully, but permission. Enough for tonight. Cole slid the photo out. It was bent, edges worn soft by little hands. A woman in an Army combat medic uniform smiled back at him. Dark hair braided neatly, sleeves rolled, hands steady on the strap of her aid bag. Her name tape read Clark. Her rank was clear, Staff Sergeant. "Emily Clark," Cole whispered, recognizing the insignia, the unit patch, the posture of someone who carried both grit and gentleness. Mia shifted. "That's my mom." Cole looked up. "She served?" "She helped people," Mia said. "She was good. Everybody liked her." The pride in her voice flickered for a moment, then dimmed. "She went to heaven." Cole set the picture down carefully, almost reverently. "I'm sorry," he said. And he meant it in a deeper way than she could understand, because he had known medics like her, the ones who ran toward the hurt while others ducked for cover. Mia wiped her nose with the sleeve of his coat. The plastic bracelet on her wrist slid down, tapping softly against her skin. The letters were mostly rubbed off, just two still visible, E.C. Emily Clark, her mother's initials. Cheap, faded, but worn like treasure. Cole pointed gently. "You wear that for her?" Mia nodded. "She made it for me. Before she got sick." She glanced toward the store door, shoulders tightening again. After she was gone, things got different. "How?" he asked, keeping his voice steady, no pressure behind it. She fiddled with the broken zipper, tugging at the loose metal tooth. "My stepmom, she didn't like the house. She wanted it to be hers. Mom told me papers were in the attic." "Real papers," she said. "Don't let anyone take them." Cole felt a chill move through him that had nothing to do with winter. He'd heard enough in life to know when a story turned darker beneath the surface. "Your stepmom wanted the house," he said quietly. Mia nodded again, eyes glistening. "She said I made things hard. Said if I wasn't there, nobody would ask questions." Her voice dropped to a tiny tremble. "She said a lot of things." Cole's jaw tightened. Abuse, neglect, fraud, a house tied to paperwork someone wanted buried, and a child standing in the way of someone's greed. He could almost hear the gears of his old training turning back on. Situational analysis, threat assessment, pattern recognition. But this wasn't a raid, and he wasn't kicking down a door. This was a little girl trying to hold herself together on a gas station floor. So he breathed slow. He let his voice stay soft. "You did nothing wrong," he told her. "Do you hear me?" "Nothing." Mia didn't answer, but something in her posture loosened, like a cord pulled too tight finally eased. Ranger suddenly lifted his head and stared toward the entrance. Not tense, not yet, but alert. His ears pricked forward, nose twitching. Cole felt the shift immediately. "What is it, buddy?" he murmured. Ranger huffed once, the low sound deep in his chest. His body didn't rise, but his eyes stayed fixed on the glass door, unblinking. Cole followed his gaze. The officers were still near the counter, talking quietly with the store manager. But the outside lights flickered against the window headlights, passing, slowing, maybe stopping. The kind of small movement a trained dog didn't ignore. Cole's spine straightened just a fraction. His instinct sharpened, not paranoia, pattern awareness. Ranger didn't signal unless something was off. Mia noticed too. "Are they coming?" she whispered. Cole put a hand on the floor, palm open so she could see it. "You're safe," he said. "Nobody in here is taking you anywhere you don't want to go." She looked at Ranger, who leaned slightly into her side, anchoring her without a sound. Cole kept his eyes on the door, on Ranger's reaction, on the uneasy feeling sliding into the back of his mind. Something was happening. Something outside. Something closing in. And the pieces of Mia's broken sentences, in the way, didn't stop her. Papers she tried to hide suddenly carried a sharper weight. Someone didn't just want Mia forgotten. Someone wanted her gone. Cole Maddox didn't know who yet. But he knew this. Whoever they were, they had just stepped into his world, and he was not about to let them get anywhere near this little girl. The bell above the door gave a sharp metallic ring as it opened again, letting in another draft of cold air. Cole didn't bother turning. He was focused on Mia, on Ranger's low growl building in his chest, on the officers shifting uneasily nearby. But the voice that came from the doorway stopped him like a command from another lifetime. "You've got to be kidding me," the man said. "You're giving Maddox a hard time?" Lieutenant Commander Jason Hale stepped inside with snow still clinging to his shoulders, the Navy's winter uniform tight across his athletic frame. He carried the presence of someone who'd spent too many years stepping into danger before asking questions. His jaw was set, eyes sharp, and his tone carried a weight that turned every head in the store. Officer Higgs straightened immediately, instincts kicking in before his brain caught up. "Sir, we're handling a situation here." "Yeah, I can see that," Hale replied, not impressed, his gaze locked onto Cole. "Senior Chief, since when do you let rookies talk to you like this?" Cole exhaled, long and restrained. "Hale, not now." But Hale wasn't the type to back down once he'd locked onto a problem. SEALs were all wired differently, but their loyalty had the same teeth. If someone messed with one of theirs, they felt it like pressure building at the back of the skull. Martinez recognized something in Hale's tone and stepped back half a foot, reassessing the scene. Higgs did not. "Sir, with all due respect," Higgs said stiffly, "this man was found with a minor." "Maddox wasn't found with anyone," Hale snapped. "If he says the kid needed help, then she damn well needed help." His voice cracked with the kind of authority that came from years of command. Not bluster, not ego, just ironclad certainty. But while Hale's arrival shifted the power in the room, it also sparked something else. Fear. Mia saw the uniform. She stiffened. Her small hand slid off Ranger's fur and slipped behind her back like she was trying to disappear between the floor tiles. Her breath quickened. She backed up, one step, then another, until she bumped against the end of the snack aisle. Cole saw it immediately, the color draining from her face. Her knees softening, her backpack sliding from her shoulder, barely clinging to her arm. He dropped to a knee so fast his joints protested. "Hey," he whispered, steady and low. "Eyes on me. Just me." Mia's focus darted between him and Hale's uniform, like the crisp Navy insignia itself held some kind of threat. She shook her head, trembling. "Don't let him take me," she whispered. "Please, please don't let him take me." Cole held up a hand toward Hale without looking at him. "Back up," he said quietly. For a second, the room held its breath. Then Hale stepped back, not because he feared Cole no SEAL would, but because he respected him. "All right," Hale said more softly. "All right. I'm back." Ranger pressed against Mia, grounding her with his warmth, his chin resting lightly on her lap. Her fingers found his fur again, clinging like it was the only steady thing in the room. Cole waited until her breathing evened out enough that she could hear him again. "You're safe," he said. "Hale works with me. He's not here to take you anywhere." Mia's voice cracked. People in uniforms lie. That hit harder than it should have, harder than Cole expected. Hale's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He just nodded once, an acknowledgement of truths he didn't yet understand. Cole turned, finally looking up at Hale. "She's terrified," he said quietly. "Dial it down." Hale nodded again, slower this time. "I didn't know," Hale murmured. "I just heard someone giving you grief, and—" "Yeah," Cole said, sighing. "I know." Hale crouched beside them but kept a respectful distance, far enough to avoid crowding, close enough to show solidarity. That's when he saw the photo lying on the floor beside Mia's open backpack. His breath caught. "Is that?" Hale reached out slowly, like he was approaching a live wire. "No way!" He picked up the photo with careful fingers. Staff Sergeant Emily Clark stared back at him from years earlier. Perfect uniform, medic patch, sunlight catching her smile. "Emily," Hale whispered. She was, God, Maddox, she was the real deal. Cole's head tilted. "You knew her?" "Knew her." Hale looked up, eyes hardening with something like grief. "She saved my medic's life in Kandahar. We got ambushed outside a village, 3 of ours hit." Emily didn't even hesitate. She was the one who held pressure on Ramirez's artery until evac landed. If she hadn't been there, his voice trailed off. He swallowed hard. She was the kind of soldier you don't forget. Mia watched him with wide, searching eyes, like she didn't know whether to run or trust him. Hale turned to her gently, voice quieter. "Your mom, she was a hero. A real one." Mia's lip trembled, but she didn't back away this time. Respect shifted in the room, subtle but powerful. Not just for Cole, for Mia. For the woman in the photograph whose courage still echoed in the world through her daughter. Higgs cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sir, you know her family?" "I know enough," Hale said sharply, "and enough to tell you this kid isn't lying." Mia flinched again, hugging her backpack. Hale softened. "Hey, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to help." He looked at Cole and lowered his voice. After Emily passed, there was noise. Legal noise. Property issues. Something about a house she inherited. I heard rumors it was tied up in a dispute, someone trying to contest her rights. Didn't think much of it at the time. Cole's expression darkened. Someone wanted the house. More than wanted, Hale said. Someone fought hard to get it. Mia lifted her head slightly, almost whispering into the space between them. "The papers," she said. Cole turned gently. "What papers?" "In the attic," Mia whispered. "Mom hid them. She said one day people would try to take the house. She told me where they were. She told me to keep them safe." The officers exchanged looks. Hale's face changed completely, curiosity sharpening into concern. "What kind of papers, Mia?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But my stepmom, she looked everywhere. She said if I didn't tell her where they were, everything would be easier without me." A sharp inhale cut through the store. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Jesus!" Cole felt his old instincts snap back into place, the ones he tried so hard to retire. Threat analysis. Motive. Leverage. Vulnerability. Someone had been trying to erase a child because she was the single remaining obstacle to property they wanted. Everything else, the cold, the trash bag, the fear, it all made sense. Hale turned slowly toward the officers. Not yelling, not threatening. Just speaking like a man who had seen enough truth for one night. "Whatever this child says," Hale said, "you listen." Officer Martinez nodded immediately. Higgs hesitated, sweat forming at the base of his neck, but even he seemed to grasp that something deeper was unfolding here. Cole settled a hand lightly on Mia's shoulder. "You did right by telling us," he said. "We're going to make sure you're safe." But outside, Ranger's ears flicked again. Toward the door, toward the darkness. Toward whoever might be looking for her. And for the first time since entering the store, Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. Someone wasn't done with Mia Clark. Officer Higgs opened his mouth to argue again, but Hale rose to his full height in a way that changed the pressure in the room. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't posturing. He was simply stepping into command, the way some men slip into a familiar uniform. "All right," Hale said, voice steady. "Listen up." Both officers turned toward him. Even Martinez straightened a little, sensing the shift. Hale pointed toward Cole with an open hand, firm, respectful. "This man," he said, "is Senior Chief Cole Maddox. Silver Star. Valor Device. 2 deployments with me, he carried men out of places they swore no one could get into." A hush fell, like someone had sucked all the air out of the aisles. Even the soda cooler hummed quieter. Hale didn't stop. "If he says this child isn't safe," he continued, "then she's not safe. End of discussion." The words hit the room like a silent blast. Higgs blinked hard, thrown off balance. Martinez nodded once, the kind of nod that meant he'd recalibrate everything he thought he knew about the situation. Even Dave, the manager, took a half-step back, as if reconsidering every suspicion he'd thrown at Cole the moment they walked in. At the back of the store, the two young soldiers who had mocked Cole earlier stood frozen. One looked like his stomach had dropped to his boots. The other swallowed so hard it was audible. They had smirked at him outside, laughed at the man, joked about the dog. Now they stared like they'd just realized the man they ridiculed had once shouldered the lives of entire teams. Cole didn't lift his head, didn't puff his chest, didn't acknowledge any of it. He rubbed Ranger's ear softly, eyes still on Mia, doing everything he could to keep the moment gentle for her. He hated attention, always had. The uniform might be off his body, but it stayed in other people's eyes. That was enough for him, and too much at the same time. Mia, small and shivering under his coat, looked from Hale to Cole. Her eyes were wide, not with fear this time, but with something else. Something slow, dawning, quiet. She had seen people talk down to Cole tonight. She had seen suspicion, impatience, judgment. And Cole had taken every bit of it without raising his voice, without flinching. Now she watched a Navy officer, a man in full uniform, stand at rigid attention when he spoke Cole's name. She watched the room shift around him with a respect she didn't understand yet, but felt in her bones. Her fingers tightened in the fabric of his sleeve. Not out of fear, but something closer to belief. For the first time, Mia seemed to grasp who was kneeling in front of her. This wasn't just the man who found her behind a dumpster. This wasn't just the man who wrapped her in his coat and told her she mattered. This was someone people listened to. Someone people stood straighter for. Someone who carried weight, even without a uniform. Cole glanced down at her, meeting her eyes for just a moment, and Mia breathed slow, steady, for the first time all night, as if she finally understood. The quiet man beside her wasn't leaving her. And the world knew better than to argue with him. Martinez got on the radio first, his voice lower than before, all the rough edges sanded down. Hale stood beside him, giving quiet, precise instructions, the kind of clipped language people in uniform recognized immediately. Within minutes, the tension that had filled the store shifted into something orderly, purposeful. A plan. "We're getting emergency protective transport," Hale said to Cole. "She won't go into the system tonight. She goes with you." "I'll file the report myself." Cole nodded once in thanks, still kneeling beside Mia. Ranger stayed pressed to her side, every inch of him alert but gentle. When the patrol SUV rolled to a stop outside, lights off to avoid drawing attention, Hale touched Cole's shoulder. "Let's move." Cole helped Mia stand slowly. She held her backpack close, her fingers clutching the torn strap like it was the last piece of home she had left. Ranger walked so close his shoulder brushed her knee with every step. Cole wrapped the rest of his coat around her, pulling the edges tight as they stepped into the night. The blast of cold hit her, but for the first time she didn't flinch. She pressed closer to Cole, trusting the warmth, trusting the shield he made around her with his arm. Snow drifted under the streetlights. The lot was quiet except for the hum of the patrol engine and the muffled crunch of boots on slush. Up ahead, the two young soldiers from earlier stood beside their Humvee. Their breath clouded in the air as they watched the trio approach. The retired senior chief, the little girl in his coat, the dog walking like a silent sentinel. Cole didn't look at them. He had no interest in rubbing anything in. But Hale did. He stopped in front of them, his boots hitting the pavement with purpose. "You two boys listen closely," Hale said, voice firm but not cruel. "Show some respect." That man carried half our team home. It hit harder than a shout would have. The soldiers snapped upright like someone had yanked strings in their spines. One swallowed visibly, color draining from his face. The other looked like he wished the pavement would swallow him whole. Shame sat heavy on both of them. The first soldier stepped forward, awkward and stiff, unsure if he even had the right to speak. But he lifted a hand anyway, his salute trembling slightly in the cold. "Sir," he said quietly. I didn't know." Cole didn't answer. He didn't salute back. He just dipped his chin once in acknowledgement, because tonight wasn't about pride or ranks. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about Mia. She noticed the salute. She noticed the way the soldiers looked at Cole now, not like a stranger, not like a man to dismiss, but like someone who mattered, someone steady, someone strong. She tugged lightly on his coat. When he looked down, she gave him the smallest, most tired smile he had ever seen, like a flicker of light in a room that had been dark for years. That was the first smile of the night. Faint, fragile, but real. Cole felt something shift in his chest, something warm and painful at the same time. Hale opened the SUV door. "Let's get her out of here." Cole lifted Mia gently into the back seat. Ranger jumped in beside her, settling so his body blocked the window and the door, silent reassurance that she wasn't going anywhere she didn't want to go. Cole leaned in, adjusting the coat around her shoulders one more time. Her eyes were heavy, exhaustion finally winning now that survival wasn't the only thing filling her mind. She whispered, "Are you coming with me?" Cole rested a hand against her small shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You hear me? You're safe now." She nodded, her breath shaking once before she let her head rest against Ranger's side. The dog closed his eyes, leaning into her like he'd been waiting all night for her to stop trembling. As Cole closed the door gently, he whispered the promise again, this time to himself, to her, to whatever was listening in the cold. "You're safe now." "I promise." Cole carried Mia up the steps to a small townhouse on the edge of the base, careful not to wake her when her head dropped against his shoulder. The heater inside clicked on as he stepped through the door, filling the room with a soft hum. Hale stayed just long enough to confirm the paperwork he'd pushed through overnight. Temporary protective custody, immediate safety hold, emergency guardianship protocols. Things Cole had heard of, but never imagined would land on his kitchen table. "I'll call you in the morning," Hale said quietly. "You did the right thing tonight." Cole didn't answer. He just nodded once as Ranger nudged past him to take his usual place beside Mia's feet. Hale closed the door behind him, leaving the house in a still, heavy silence. Cole laid Mia gently on the couch, pulling a blanket over her and tucking it around her shoulders. She barely stirred. Ranger circled once, then pressed himself alongside her, his warm body forming a protective curve. Mia's hand found his fur even in her sleep. Cole stepped back, watching them for a long moment. The little girl, the old war dog, both worn down by worlds that had asked too much of them. He let out a slow breath and shifted into the kitchen. The room was dim, lit only by the street lamp outside filtering through the blinds. Snow drifted past the window in quiet spirals. Cole sat at the table, elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped loosely like he wasn't sure whether to pray or simply sit still. He thought about missions. The ones chosen, planned, rehearsed. The ones demanded in split seconds. The ones that stayed with him long after the gear was packed away. And then there were nights like this, unexpected, unrequested, unannounced, yet somehow heavier than half the deployments he'd survived. He'd left the Navy trying to outrun ghosts, trying to convince himself he'd given enough, done enough, bled enough. But here he was again, in a different kind of battlefield, where the danger wasn't bullets or explosions, but something slower, quieter, and in some ways crueler, a child left alone in the cold with nobody looking for her. He wasn't wearing a uniform anymore, but tonight reminded him that purpose didn't retire. It found you, whether you wanted it to or not. Mia stirred, eyes opening just a sliver. "Thank you," she whispered, voice raspy with sleep, "for finding me." Cole crouched beside the couch. "You're not lost anymore," he said softly. "Not while I'm here." Her eyes closed again, trusting him without hesitation. Ranger shifted, letting out a low, content breath as he settled deeper around her. Cole stayed there for a moment, one hand resting on Ranger's shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall beneath his palm. Outside, the wind brushed softly against the siding, but inside, for the first time in a long time, something felt settled. The narrator's voice slips in here. True courage isn't always born in battle. Sometimes it's found in the quietest choices. The decision to stop instead of walk past, to listen instead of turn away, to lift someone smaller than yourself out of the cold before the world swallows them whole. Strength isn't measured in medals or ranks. It's measured in moments like this, when a retired SEAL, a wounded dog, and a scared child find each other in the dark and refuse to let go, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply care. There are struggles veterans carry that never show on the surface, memories they don't talk about, nights they sit awake, battles they keep fighting long after everyone else forgets the war is over. And sometimes the world doesn't see them until a moment like tonight, when one of them steps forward quietly, without recognition or orders, and chooses to protect someone who can't protect themselves. That's what courage looks like outside the uniform, not medals, not headlines, just a choice made in a cold alley on a night when nobody was watching, except a little girl who needed someone to finally stay. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more military and veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come.